Africa has one of the fastest growing youth population. My belief is that the estimates could be approaching 270 million. This population is highly educated. They are very charged in terms of their responsibilities as citizens of Africa, and they are ready to engage in the arenas of ICT, technology, and indeed innovation. And that's why we are saying that Africa needs now to graduate to the next level of competitiveness for its growth. If I can give an example of Kenya, our ICT infrastructure system is very, very advanced. And that's why we are having huge numbers of investors coming into Kenya because of the incubations and startups that are taking place. ICT is, for one, reducing the rate of poverty in our countries. So here during TICAD, we'll be engaging Japanese investors and telling them that this is the next stage in terms of Africa's development, and we need to have Japanese technology homing in Africa. In Nairobi in 2016, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and my president, President Uhuru Kenyatta, were the first ones to pronounce the fact that the business platform has to be included in the plenary session. In the previous years, you'll find that business sector was always a side event. But in Nairobi, for the first time in TICAD history, we had the private sector participating alongside with African heads of states and indeed Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in plenary. Now coming to TICAD 7, we have graduated to the level that it has now become imperative that the business or the PPPs have to be more pronounced in Japanese engagement in Africa. Certainly, as you're aware, Africa is rich. It's rich in resources, rich in population, rich in arable land, rich in blue economy, which we are starting to harness now, looking at it in a very serious manner. And all these require foreign investment. Africa has lacked, obviously, in terms of capital, and that's why we've not been able to develop in certain areas. But now, with the Japanese investors, investments, which is focused mainly in infrastructure, energy, human resource, education, health sector, all these are significant areas that Japanese investors can be focusing on. Because when you look at the energy sector, any investment going into generating energy eventually cascades down into manufacturing. And when you're having manufacturing moving at an appropriate rate, you are creating jobs, you are having people being employed, the standards of living of people is increasing. And the same thing applies when you look at focus on investment in infrastructure. You're moving people and goods. You are undertaking serious trade. So it's very, very important that the Japanese investors, and we are really, really encouraging them to seriously look at these areas. Africa is looking out for investment, and we are ready. The environment is suitable. The environment has been enabled, so the Japanese investors should focus more on investing in Africa. And our leaders have indeed shown the way, and in particular, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is very particular that the private sector, the Japanese private sector, needs to be more aggressive, if I can use that terminology, in Africa. There is very good political stability in Africa. And that stability has been enabled by the existence of new constitutions which are guaranteeing private ownership. There is a guarantee that you're given certain waivers in undertaking business in Africa. You're finding that countries are developing in the areas of connectivity, the aspects of insurance and businesses. All these elements become very, very important to an investor who wants to invest in Africa. It's very important if you constantly follow African development issues. Just recently, during the heads of states and governments meeting in Niamey, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement was finally signed by all African countries. This has opened up now a huge market for not only Japanese companies, but the rest of the world. And we are telling the rest of the world that Africa is ready to trade as a bloc. Africa is trading within itself, which is creating good competition. So we are urging the Japanese companies to look at these incentives which African governments and indeed African states are putting forth or are formulating for them to be able to engage in Africa. Africa is a very positive destination for investments. As far as Kenya is concerned, we have made major strides in attracting foreign investment. For one, the Constitution guarantees the protection of investment. The Constitution itself guarantees protection of investment. There is a 10-year holiday on matters regarding tax. We are waiving VAT and other related taxes on certain inputs. We have within our laws the Investment Protection Act, which is a very, very important act, which I can give an example, led to Japan and Kenya signing the Investment and Protection of Promotion and Investment Protection Agreement in 2016. And that has actually enabled quite a number of Japanese companies since 2016 to open shop in Kenya. I should also add that the fact that our service industry is highly advanced, it has actually enabled foreign investors to feel very, very comfortable in operating in Kenya. If you recall, in 2015, the CEO of Microsoft launched Windows 10 in Nairobi. And why he chose Nairobi? It's because of the infrastructural development that is available in Kenya. Well, last year in November, Kenya had the honor and privilege to host the first ever Sustainable Blue Economy Conference. If you look at Africa as a whole, a quarter of the African population live within 100 kilometers of the sea or the ocean. Significantly, more than 70% of our trade is done in the oceans. We need to engage seriously in the development of blue economy in Africa, and certainly infrastructure will be very key. Kenya is a firm believer of international rule-based systems. We are signatory to the United Nations Law of the Sea, and we stand by the principles enshrined in this convention and other related conventions. Our coastline is about 536 kilometers. So the oceans and the seas become an integral part of what Kenya and indeed Africa is all about. So the fact that we can be able to trade easily without hindrance or move our goods up and down the oceans without hindrance is a very, very important aspects. And I just want to stress once again that the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea is our guiding light, and we believe that international rule-based systems is the only way that trade or international trade can be engaged without interference.